Hello, and welcome to Grade.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Barbara Jimenez Santiago from Equality Now, an organization whose mission is to achieve legal and systematic change that addresses violence and discrimination against women and girls around the world. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that has held governments responsible for ending legal inequality, sex trafficking, sexual violence, and harmful practices. Hello, Barbara. Welcome to Grade.com Talks. We're excited to have you here.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Could you please describe Equality Now for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Well, Equality Now is a global organization. We have colleagues all over the world that we advocate through the power of law to make a systematic change and advance the rights of women and girls. And we do it with many creative ways. We do it through advocacy, through communications campaigns, in legal strategic litigation, and supporting, also giving the space for survivors and women's or young advocates to and elevate the work that they're doing in the ground.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Seeing that you are taking action on a legal level and seeking systematic change and legal change that can build a platform that can provide a justice system that is equal both for men and women, and addresses the challenges in terms of sexual trafficking, sexual violence. It's very important what Equality Now is doing, and the fact that you are doing it in global scale in many countries, in regions across the globe, and are aware of the issues that women and young girls face around the world, and are able to elevate those issues and make changes on a legal level. That's very worth acknowledging. A tagline of your organization is a just world for women and girls. Could you please describe to us, how does that world look like?
Well, it's very interesting to be talking in 2021 a just, world for women and girls. We, because of the past of the women that are being here in the world before me, we've been achieving a lot of legal reforms and legal equality on laws, but it has a lot to be done to continue to formally, achieve that legal equality. It's a lot of culture and patriarchal and gender stereotype that we still have to fight. And it has to be in many different levels. So we do want our part, but we always ask everyone in their own capacity to continue to advocating for a better life for women and girls. And you were mentioning like the issues that we work: sexual violence, ending sex trafficking, including online sex trafficking, or harmful practices. That's the issues that we're being and the society are been fighting, and female and women organizations have been fighting for so many years. I think this is this time that everyone takes the chance to move forward and to end it for all.
Absolutely. What I really liked about your description and definition, you mentioned there's not only a legal part to the just world, there's also a part where it comes to cultural aspects. There's also types in terms of the social structure. So we have to address the issue of creating a just world for women and girls, not in terms of just the legal, although the legal part is the base, the foundation, yet on the individual level, on the society level, we have to create spaces. We have to make changes in a way that women and girls feel safe, and women and girls are empowered to take action, and they are on a pair with the society and the men. And it's very important to create, as mentioned by you, that just world. And it's time to move on. It's time to progress. And we have all instruments and tools provided for that. And it's on our shoulders to take the action for it. As a lawyer, you have been working on a report that your organization will be publishing in September, called "How Discriminatory Sexual Violence Laws and Practices Hurting Women, Girls, and Adolescents in Americas." Could you please describe to us, in short, what this report will cover?
Yes. So we are with our global, like in our global strategy, we've been publishing different reports about to put it in the agenda. What is the legal aspects of and the laws, how the laws look like in sexual violence in the penal codes and other practices. So in the report that we're going to be launching in September, we study the rape laws and sexual violence laws of 43 jurisdictions, going to cover North America, US, Latin America, South America, and the Caribbean, because we are very worried that still there's a lot of impunity. And even though we have laws in this regard, there's still a lot of gaps, especially in Latin America. We discover our findings shows that there's a few countries in Latin America that has laws that calls a stupro, and those laws are providing discrimination against adolescents because provide less punity for girls and adolescents. And also the rape laws, the majority of them are based on the victims has to demonstrate the use of the use of force and the use of violence and intimidation, and are not based on the willing on consent. So with that definition of the law, is still giving a lot of impunity in the process. The woman cannot access to justice. It's very hard for them to demonstrate that they were being raped. And so that's what I wanted to show with this report, that even the laws that we have, there's still a lot to change, to do in the law and beyond the law in other practices as well, like how we implemented this law, how the governments put enough resources to be able to be effective in these laws, training for the operators, and how we also can fight the gender stereotype and the social stereotypes that go around this culture of silence on sexual violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although there are laws in place in majority of countries, those laws as described by you in particular countries, they are not very effective, and they put the blame victim shaming, and they have the victims have to go through such a harsh and challenging process to and to explain and to seek justice, and it's very unfair and it's very unjust, and that the fact that this report will highlight those issues and bring attention to this particular unjust laws can hopefully make a shift into direction that people will be aware, the governments will be aware of that injustices going on in their particular jurisdictions and make a change towards that. But let's take a step back and understand what are some of the challenges sexual victims face when they are seeking justice. Could you please describe those challenges to us for maybe broader audience who is not fully aware of the issue?
Yeah, so like the first issue is when they break the silence, when the victims speak, it's to be believed. Like that's the first aspect. I think the other challenge is to find sensitive services when they trying to find support in services or health areas. Also, other challenges is when they going or they claim to the judicial system is to be believed. They ask, like what we call the victim blame is like they usually put the burden of themselves to explain why they didn't fight back, why they didn't say anything about it, why she was at that time in the street alone. It puts a lot of burden and is constructed out all the gender stereotype that the woman cannot be alone, that the woman cannot be at night in the streets, why you wearing that clothes. And that all is, around the judicial system. And also the victim have to tell the story many, many, many times. So one of the things that we're recommending is to has victims approach or center victims approach where the victim has not should not be talking and saying the story 3 or 4 times through the whole process. Also to giving them support during the process, and especially if you have a better law that will help them not to start to especially if it's in case of rape, you don't have to explain why you didn't fight back or why it's construct on the lack of the woman consenting of a sexual relationship with the possible coercion circumstances. It will be better for those that have the responsibility to make a judgment to decide in those cases.
Mm-hmm. It's very unfortunate that the victims have to tell their stories over and over and relieve that and the pain that they must have felt and the shame that the system is putting them in is very heartbreaking, and trying to find a systematic approach, trying to build a system that will be very sensitive, as mentioned by you. If there were victim specialties in place, that would make the process less stressful and less harmful. And could you please, as you have analyzed 43 jurisdictions, could you please describe whether there is a best practice on those 43 jurisdictions you have analyzed for that other countries can learn from on their approach of handling this issue?
Yeah, in regarding the law, we are mentioning Canada. Canada legislation is the one that we identify is one of the most complete in there, because are based on the lack of consent and also provide different circumstances in where the consent cannot be provided. And I think that is a very clear approach to say, okay, if the victim it was impossibility in the different circumstances, for example, like any discapacity or any other situation, or the power, for example, the power and the relationship is also including in there those relationships that usually put the burden of the victim to prove why that relationship wasn't power. For example, teachers or priests or people from the church or family, like the incest relationship is all those circumstances. It could give possibility for the judges to understand better that in that situation the victim has not the capacity to consent. So Canada is one of them, even though the experts in the country, because the report also have some experts approach and some survivor stories that to demonstrate how these laws are being implemented and to show what are still the challenge and other barriers the victims are facing beyond the law. So in Canada, you're going to see in the report that the victims say that even though we have a good law, what we call like this is a very good law, there's still a lot of issues for implementation. So I think the law, as you say, is just one side. It's super important. But there's other constructions around it that we still have to fight as well. We have to fight it in the community, we have to fight it in the family, we have to fight it in different levels. But once the victim wants to seek justice, because like seek justice is a process also for healing for themselves, we have to have the better system for them, not a social system. It has to be the best victim so they could not re-victimize and the system or the state violate what we call institutional violence, it not feels violent again by the state.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that we have to have a better system that doesn't put the blame on the victim, and it's very important for girls who have who have gone through the sexual violence to speak up. But how can we encourage the girls to speak up? And could you please explain to us what the system that you have described, the supportive system, should look like for the girls to be able to speak up and defend themselves and seek justice?
Yeah, I think as a cultures, we have to understand this is a problem, and this is a problem that is happening in our homes. COVID-19 demonstrate with the lockdown, like how all these cases of sexual violence and domestic violence were increased because we were, like at home. So the violence was there, like the perpetrators were at home. So I think it's a process where everyone understanding that this is a problem is happening in your home and your community, and how we can start providing sexual education in their development capacity for each child so they can recognize when something is wrong, when some type of behavior from adult or from one person that you trust is incorrect, and you should speak. When the person or the kids or the adolescents speak, the rest of us that are listening, we have to believe and to be there to support that process and to understand and know in your community what are the different services that can support you to accompany or to support a victim. And you can call a center that support victims, but you have to know what are those services that you have around your community. And also, yes, I think the believing part is so important for a healing process of a victim, that and that gives them the opportunity to also go through a system process to go, because we have many cases in the judicial process, but many other cases never arrive to the judicial process, stay in the silence, and that has a lot of trauma for the rest of their lives of the children and adolescents continue to their adulthood. So I think it's something that stop protecting perpetrators in the family and in their community and in the different capacities, and to protect. Sexual education is very important. Gender perspective education in schools is very important. What I mean about gender perspectives is to start teaching girls and boys that they have to respect each other, that they have the capacity to be whatever they want in their life, that is not gender stereotypes assigned, that the colors are colors for every kid. It's not something, bad to teach them. It's something that just to teach them that we become equally and we can be anything that we want in life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I really like the part that you mentioned about educating and increasing the awareness. Once you know those issues are not foreign, those issues are happening around, these cases are happening around our families, our communities. And when we disregard the feelings, when we disregard the words that the adolescents and childs who have felt a sexual violence say, and if we disregard them, it instead of helping them, hearing them and believing in them, we're putting them in a box, and then they have to go through the struggle alone, and they shouldn't. We as the community members, we as parents, brothers, sisters, teachers, priests, or anyone who is in the community should be able to understand the feelings, to understand and believe the words of the victims, and help them to go and seek the justice and heal. As you mentioned, seeking justice is a part of healing, and as sooner as the victim can heal from this process, they can go back to their lives and achieve all the dreams that they have, and realize their potential to the fullest. So educating, building safe spaces for victims to speak up, especially for children and adolescents, is very important. And the fact that the report that you have composed and the work of the Equality Now is highlighting that is very, very important. If someone would like to support Equality Now, how can they do so?
Well, we can, many things. You can follow us in our page, our social channels and Equality Now, and visit our webpage. And follow our campaigns and support the campaigns. I think, our philosophy is that everyone can be an advocate. So if this is an issue that really touches you, you can use also the recommendations in the report and do your part. The report is for the governments and for the lawmakers and the human rights advocates, but everyone can advocate in that sense to your own local legislators. So I think that's something that everyone can do. And we also, you can subscribe in our mailing lists, donate to our cause. This is in your capacity. And we always also say to victims that we are, if you're ready and you are empowered to tell the story to the world, we're here. We don't provide direct services, but we are a platform for survivors as well to tell the story to the world. And as you say, we've been supporting many also programs of prevention for safe spaces for girls and adolescents. That's another way to support this cause. So yeah, I think that's many ways to support us.
Wonderful. The link to the Quality Now's website will be provided in the description. So you viewing and listening can go to the website and familiarize yourself with all the projects Barbara and the team at the Quality Now are running and support their mission and follow their campaigns and make a financial contribution if you wish to. Thank you so much, Barbara. It was wonderful to get to know you and the mission and the work your organization is doing. And I'm very excited to read about the reports that will be coming this September. And I suggest to all our viewers and listeners to follow up on the report and be advocates and for the justice, for creating a just world for women and girls. For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithm that this conversation is important, that we need to create a just world for girls and women. Thank you and see you in the next episode.